English major my
Again,
first year
follow
in
the
college,
words. We're improving your
after being
reading.
old as
Follow the
pre-med.
words. Don't just
I started
listen.
writing nonfiction as a freelancer the week after I was told by my former boss that writing was my worst skill and I should hone my talents toward account management. But it wasn't until 1985 that I finally began to write fiction. And at first I wrote using what I thought to be wittily crafted sentences. Sentences that would finally prove I had mastery over the English language. Here's an example from the first draft of a story that later made its way into the Joy Luck Club, but without this line. That was my mental quandary in its nascent state. A terrible line, which I can barely pronounce. Fortunately, for reasons I won't get into today, I later decided I should envision a reader for the stories I would write. And the reader I decided upon was my mother, because these were stories about mothers. So with this reader in mind, and in fact, she did read my early drafts, I began to write stories using all the Englishes I grew up with. The English I spoke to my mother, which for lack of a better term might be described as simple. The English she used with me, which for lack of a better term might be described as broken. My translation of her Chinese, which could certainly be described as watered down. And what I imagined to be her translation of her Chinese, if she could speak in perfect English, her internal language. And for that I sought to preserve the essence, but neither an English nor a Chinese structure. I wanted to capture what language ability tests can never reveal.
Right.
Her intent, her passion, her imagery, the rhythms of her speech, and the nature of her thoughts. Apart from what any critic had to say about my writing, I knew I had succeeded where it counted when my mother finished reading my book and gave me her verdict. So easy to read.
I once had a student who was raised in a house where no English was spoken, or broken English as it said in this. And the student said, "This text makes some sense to me. I understand how I can move or modulate back and forth." I would say to all students who read this text the following, though. This text points out the importance of elocution, to be able to speak well. Because the way you speak, people make assumptions about you in some ways, and it's important that you know how to speak well, how to present yourself well. Maybe as juniors, this is something for us to focus on in our senior year, yes? Thank you.